And we're back. Welcome back to Digging Deeper. Today we are talking about employee branding. Is it really worth it? What is it? How do you do it? And today with us we have our Senior Vice President of Strategy and Marketing, Julie Arsenault. And we're back. First off, what is an employer brand and how is it different in any way to just your brand? What's the difference between your brand and an employment brand?
Okay. So your employment brand is, why do people want to work for you? Or why don't they want to work for you if you have a bad employment brand? Your marketing brand is why people want to buy from you.
Correct. Are they linked or are they completely separate?
They're linked. Of course they're linked. Everything's connected.
Right.
So very often your why people want to buy from you is because they like the people that work for you. They define the experience that people have with your brand.
What was it Mike Riley used to always say? People buy from those they like, know, and trust, or something of that nature. I'm sure I butchered it, but yeah. Same idea.
So when you're thinking about employment branding, I think people a lot of times just jump to, well, we'll just tell people why it's great to work for us. You see that everywhere where they put out job ads and they're like, family company, great hours, great pay, great benefits. But that doesn't get to any of the emotional parts of why people actually want to work for you. So I think when you're talking about employment branding, the first thing you should do is a little bit counterintuitive, but you should conduct a third party, so that people trust it, internal survey of your employees and ask them why they are working for you. Okay,
so let's recap real quick. So your employment brand is basically why someone would want to work for you. Your marketing brand is why someone wants to buy from you. They, of course, are linked, but the only way to start to build a better employee brand is to understand where it's currently at. And the only way to do that is to get honest feedback from your current employees.
100%. Yes. Okay. I will say this can be a little bit of a slippery slope. Do not do an internal survey asking for honest feedback if you have zero plans or ability to do anything with the feedback.
Right. Yeah. Because if you get people to express their negative feelings with no plans to address them, then they're just you're almost conjuring up a bad juju.
But it's important to understand where you're at. So if you are committed to employment branding and building your employment brand, that is a great place to start. You should also look at your reviews on Glassdoor, Indeed, Salary.com, some of the other places, Google, Facebook. We understand people are more motivated to leave reviews if they are unhappy, but you should take that into consideration, because that is a part of your reputation. That's setting the expectation of what it's like to work for you.
And I would just say in those reviews, like, people tend to might be over the top and exaggerate the negative parts, but there might be a kernel of truth in there. There still could be, there's probably a kernel of truth somewhere in there.
Especially if you see consistent themes.
Yes, exactly.
So understanding why people currently work for you gives you an opportunity to sweeten the value proposition. Maybe you have problematic managers that need to be coached. Maybe you do need to sweeten your benefits package. Maybe you have specific teams within the organization that are interacting with the public, interacting with prospective employees that are completely overworked. I know someone who went to an interview once, and the guy interviewing him talked about how burnt out he was the entire time. I was like, okay, great. I don't want to come work for you now. But if you don't understand where your employees are at and why they're working for you, you're flying blind. You're going to bring in tons of people to interview, and you're not going to fully understand the experience that they're getting.
Well, I know in our work with drivers, and every time we've surveyed drivers, the number one recommendation, or the number one place that drivers say you should look to before going to work for somebody is talk to one of their current drivers. If someone talked to a driver that worked for you, you should have an inkling of what they would say.
Yes.
About you and what it's like to work for you.
Right. And that applies for other changeable roles. Like pharmacists might say, what is it like to work for this pharmacy?
Yeah.
A technician for, say, like a Ford dealership is going to ask somebody, because these people in these industries talk to each other. They know each other. They know who's doing what types of work. They're going to say, hey, what's it like at this shop? It could be somebody who works for a sales team. What's the sales management like? What are the expectations?
So once you get that honest feedback, what should be your next step?
So address what you can that's negative. Right. And then, so employment branding starts with internal communication.
Okay.
So it's, as you're building any sort of reputation, if you want a good one, you need to communicate and you need to set expectations and then follow through. It's the do what you say you're going to do.
Right. You know, it's interesting. It's don't laugh at me. It's interesting because I got to admit, when I came into the conversation, I didn't even think of it like that. I guess my mind wasn't where it should have been. But
that's why you bring experts.
I started thinking of all the like tactics that you could use. I'm like, testimonials. Let's get social. You guys should YouTube Let's Get Social and go watch this wonderful song that was written for a social media marketing conference. It's endorsed by Audrey. And I started thinking tactical. And you're saying before you even think of these things that we tend to think of outreach and how to present your employer brand, the first thing you have to do, I mean, way before any of that, before you have any ideas of let's get social, before you do any of that, you have to understand why people want to work for you. And to understand that, you have to get honest feedback, and you probably need a third-party survey team to be able to get that brand.
Correct.
And then once you do that, you have to find the consistencies of where you're negative and begin to fix those. So internal, the whole process begins with internal communication, essentially.
Yes, absolutely.
Before you make a single testimonial or Facebook post or separate Instagram page for the people there, start with internal communication.
Yes.
Okay.
Because if you don't, this is where you really be shooting yourself in the foot. A lot of times the people in management have a disconnect of what the actual experience is of working there and why people actually work there. So if you go out and start saying, hey, we are a family-based company with great pay, and then your candidates go talk to somebody that works there and they're like, well, the pay sucks, but you can, they're really flexible. Yeah. So that's actually why I work here, because I've got to manage kids and side projects and all of this, and they're really flexible with that. So I'll take less pay so I can be there for my family.
Right.
So, or you say like, hey, we have great vacation policy. And then you go talk to employees and they say, well, they say unlimited vacation, but that actually means you get no vacation.
It's like that video I sent you the other day where the guy's like, do you like working in a fast-paced environment? And he's like, you mean a poorly managed one? Probably yelled a little bit there. But yeah, it's that same idea.
So you just basically, you don't want there to be a mismatch.
Right.
You have you talk about great work-life balance, and all of your Glassdoor reviews are like, they'll work you like a dog.
Yeah.
You never get to leave your work at the office.
Right.
So this is where, like, once you understand what is unique about your employment brand, what is unique about your value proposition, you can then, and you're making steps to improve that and hone it, and build trust with your employees so that they become advocates for your employment brand. Then we can talk about how we get that message out in the world.
Okay, so here's another thing that, man, my mind wasn't right for this conversation, but it's getting there. So I was initially thinking, coming in here thinking tactics and testimonials and let's get social. And I'm thinking marketing team. When you start talking about building this value proposition and understanding how people think about you, who at the company should be owning this?
Well, ideally, if you should have a chief talent officer. that would own this. Many companies don't. And the most they'll have is like a VP of HR.
You're right.
And HR is functioning to protect the organization legally. And that's really a disservice to what human resources professionals could be and should be.
Right.
They should think of themselves as talent teams, talent management. And in that role, there needs to be somebody who is in charge of employee communications, internal communications.
Right.
And then as that is developed, they would work with their recruiting team to repeat that messaging out into the world to pools of candidates.
Okay. All right. So let's move beyond. What would be the next step if we say we've established how we understand why people want to work for us? We understand what we could be working on. We've found consistent complaints or feedback that say, here's an area for improvement. Would the next step be obviously to address those areas if we can, but do you need a formalized EVP or employment value proposition?
Yes.
Okay.
It should be documented and it should be updated periodically and it should be vetted with your current employees.
Okay.
And then you should have a documented internal communication plan. You say, hey, here are the things we know we need to improve on. Here are the steps we're taking to improve them, or here's why we can't do anything about it.
And then I assume you would need for your EVP, employment value proposition, you would need buy-in from across your leadership team on that.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And I would say a lot of companies benefit from working with an outside RPO team.
Yeah.
Because it's hard to do it all internally because you don't have the infrastructure to do this. And sometimes it's difficult to get, like you need buy-in all the way to the CEO. They have to understand how important their talent is to the success of the organization.
Right. It's like the great Nick Saban once said. He said, it's my job to get the wrong people off the bus and the right people on the bus, or something like that. But basically he's saying your organization or your program is only as good as its people.
Absolutely.
What is the next step to actually start, I don't want to say weaponize, but weaponize our employee brand to start using it to bring in good talent?
Keep your message is like with any type of marketing. You want to be consistent in your branding and your messaging.
Correct.
You have to say the same thing a lot of times to the same people over and over again. So what you can do with this is once you kind of define the story of why people would want to work for you, find those stories and start telling them frequently. So a great example of this is McKinsey & Company, the consulting firm. Nobody works there because of the great work-life balance.
And you know this because
my spouse used to work there.
Yes.
So people go there because they want that brand on their resume, because it's known as this is the elite of the elite. You get to work on really cool projects. You're surrounded by the very smartest people. And if you can make it there, you can make it anywhere type thing. But yeah, nobody is going home at 6 o'clock.
No.
So in their employment branding videos, which they have a lot of, they talk about, hey, I got to work on this really cool project. I met some of the smartest people and I've continued to work with them throughout my career. And I've seen them move up in all of these other companies. And so they're talking about, hey, this is why I work here. This is why I love working here. And it's authentic to the experience of working there. And it's going to attract other people who that value resonates with them.
Right.
And so they say, hey, I'm going to business school. I'm an ambitious person. I care about being surrounded by other smart people. I care about the brands on my resume. Therefore, when I'm going to apply to jobs, McKinsey is my first choice.
Right. So yeah, I mean, it's building very nicely. Well done, Julie. Building very nicely this idea of we're going to understand our employment brand, and then we want to build a value proposition that actually reflects how people feel about our company, the positive things that they actually reflect. And then we're going to tell stories that create expectations that actually match the experience that people will have at our company or at any company.
So you attract the people that are going to be a good fit.
Right. And then yes, that makes sense. So you're getting good talent, but they also are culturally a fit, and they're more like their retention theoretically should be much longer because the experience matches the expectation they came in with.
Exactly.
If they come into McKinsey and they go, I'm going to work on really cool projects, but I may work till 11 o'clock every night, that's what they expected, and that's what they're going to get.
Right.
Well, what are the best ways? So we've talked about telling those stories and telling them authentically, always staying consistent across our story, no matter what. What are the best ways to tell that story?
You can do that through putting videos on your employment page, on YouTube, on Instagram, on TikTok, getting your current employers to be in that gives it a lot more authenticity, so that they can then go tell other people whatever those themes are, the quotes, the sound bites you get, you can use in your job ads so that those are staying consistent everywhere. Right. But I would say don't, you're getting like a half-life from those if you only put them out on the usual marketing channels.
Right.
Also send them and show them to your current employees to reinforce your brand, because again, they're the ones that are going to be talking to your future employees.
Where do you see people go wrong on these, on when they start trying to unveil their employee brand to the world? Where do you think people go wrong the most?
Well, this is a little bit silly, but they skip the first step. They don't figure out why people actually work there. Right. And they end up sounding like idiots putting blatantly false things out there. It would be like Boeing at this point putting out an employment ad that says it's such a safe family environment.
Yeah, that one's not going to fly well.
So that's what I see the most is people just put out the most generic crap, and they think they skip the whole first part of understanding what they are, and they are just out there in their employment advertising, saying what they think people want to hear. That is generic, bland, and at best and at worst, patently false.
Do you think, this is an aside, but just for our own kicks and giggles, don't you think it's almost the worst sin of all branding / marketing to be generic and bland?
Yes, there's no, like, why would you do something that's designed to blend in?
We already ranted about this on the last one, but my gosh, the people that are like, what should we do? I don't know. Let's look at what everybody else does and then do it just like that. Whatever. We won't get into that.
No.
The process you just described. So an employee brand is very important. It states why people want to work for you. To understand that, you must get honest feedback. To do that, you should probably use a third party to get honest feedback, a third party survey provider. Then you want to see why people actually want to work for you, formalize an employment value proposition, and then tell that consistently through authentic stories.
Yes.
Now, that process sounds like a multi-department strategy with a lot of people working together. That's hard to pull off.
It is.
Is it worth it? Is it worth it?
Yes.
Wow.
Just like having a good brand dramatically lowers your selling cost, having a good employment brand dramatically reduces your hiring cost and improves your retention. Right. Because you're attracting people that are the right fit. So you're not spending money trying to replace people that you have for positions you've already hired for.
You know, I did a study. It was not complete. I've referenced it several times, but basically we looked at people who offered referral bonuses for their employees.
Yes.
And did the amount of, did the value of the referral bonus or the amount of it correlate to their referral rate, how often their employees would actually refer them. And from what we found looking at over 200 companies is that there actually was no correlation between the amount somebody offered as a referral bonus and how often they were referred. People would not want to put themselves out on a limb and tell someone to come work for a place they did not believe in, regardless of the referral bonus.
Right.
That's the working theory. But I think all signs tend to point to that idea that it is 100% worth it to have a great employee brand, and that where the story is told consistently, because then people are much more likely to refer other great talent to your company. And if other people are referring great talent to your company, your hiring costs plummet.
Right.
So that would gel nicely with this idea that even though to do employee branding correctly and this whole system process that we've set up, it's going to be hard. You have to get a lot of people on board. The cost savings over time, 100% make it worth it. And that's not even to mention how much better your company can operate when you have the right people at the right job.
Right. So I like to think of this, like they always say, the best marketing is a great product.
Right.
And the best recruitment is having a great work culture.
Yeah.
So like it gets easier and easier to recruit people when you have an organization that works together well enough that this cross-departmental employment branding effort could happen, does happen. Then that means you have something worth marketing and sending out into the world to tell people why you're great to work for. It's ironic. It's ironic because people think that marketers and recruiters are all a bunch of liars.
Yeah.
And the thing is, none of this works unless you are brutally honest with yourself.
Yeah. I mean, false advertising only works for a certain amount of time, and then it's a big disaster.
Yeah.
Well, I think that about covers it. Great topic today. Really enjoyed it. We are a little behind on our Digging Deeper schedule because we've been putting together this new studio, or Josh and Audrey have. I did nothing. So this episode will actually come out 1st of September. But to make it up to you, we will have 2 Digging Deepers in September. And the next topic will be for the automotive industry and their need for technicians. Thank you for joining us today. See you again soon.